It's 1:30. I'd like to call the November 21st, 2016 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission to order. Roll call. Let's start with Commissioner Clare.
Here.
Commissioner Littlefield.
Present.
Commissioner White. Not here. Commissioner Hale.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Schuline.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner George.
Here.
And Commissioner Yonkel. Not here. Can I have a motion concerning the minutes of the October 17, 2016 meeting, please?
I'll move that be approved.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hale. Any discussion on the meeting minutes? And we have a motion to approve the minutes from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Hale. Votes, please. Okay, item is approved. Report on license, taxing, and record service will be done at the January meeting. We move to the consent docket. Let the record show that Commissioner Littlefield is stepping down for because of an item that's on the consent docket. Can I have a motion concerning the consent docket, please?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hale. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner George. Any discussion on the consent item, on the consent docket? Okay, I'd just like to say thank you to all the record service people for the hard work you do. There's a lot of times when it's really rough out there, cold, wet, 2 in the morning stuff. So I want to thank you for all the work that you guys do. So we have a motion from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner George, to approve the consent docket. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Thank you very much. Okay, let the record show that Commissioner Littlefield has returned. We go on now to item 5A. 5A is Timothy Johnson, President Johnson and Associates, Inc., to consider a request to change the speed limit on Northwest Grand Avenue between Northwestern Avenue and North Robinson Avenue from 40 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour. Do we have anybody here to speak on this? Sir, did you? Remember, you have up to 5 minutes, and please have your name and address.
Yeah, Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates, 1 East Sheridan Avenue, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I'm here on behalf of the applicant or the owners of the property, MidFirst Bank. As you know, over the last several years, MidFirst Bank has been acquiring the properties along Grand Boulevard and growing their city campus there. So they own all the way from, they have a bank branch on the corner of Western and Grand, and then they skip a property, then they own basically everything from there to the railroad tracks in general. And so we've been working with the staff at great detail for several months on this. We initially asked the staff to consider this to be reduced from all the way at 63rd and Grand to Robinson and 63rd. And then we've come back and reduced our application to just from Western to the railroad tracks, basically in front of the MidFirst property. The initial application was to change this from 40 to 25. And then we made a request to, with the staff's encouragement, to change that to 30. We've done several studies, speed studies in the area. One of our biggest concerns was the sight distance after the ramp work was completed on the I-44 interchange. It modified the railroad bridge and the farthest east driveway into MidFirst Bank, creating a little bit of a sight distance issue there. And so we wanted to really be considerate of that with regard to the speed. So we've submitted our information to the city staff, and I think they may have some comments to add to that. Any questions?
Just want to make sure, what was the speed limit that you wanted to go to? Did you want to modify that?
We agreed to, correct me if I'm wrong, Stuart, but I thought we revised our letter to 35.
Yes, it is. It's
Okay.
listed there on the first paragraph of the staff report,
Yep.
where we'd received an updated request from the applicant at the beginning of November asking for consideration of 35.
Right, and that's what you want.
That's correct.
That's what you really want, okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time, sir. Staff input?
Okay, we've got our comments before you. As Mr. Johnson noticed, there were a couple intersections along this corridor where we didn't meet decision site distance requirements based on a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. These locations will pass site distance requirements if the speed limit's reduced to 35. At this point in time, looking at 35 as opposed to 40 on the corridor would clean up a few site distance issues. It will make for a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit transition between Robinson Avenue at the east end and Grand Boulevard. So at this point in time, all staff could support would be consideration of a speed limit reduction to 35 from 40. Now, it still won't be in accordance with the 85th percentile speed that's being observed on the roadway, but action on the item will be at the discretion of the commission.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion concerning item 5A?
I move for approval.
We have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner Littlefield. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Schuline. Any discussion on this item?
Could we
Yes,
just
go ahead, sir.
clarify, you mean, is the motion to 30 or 35? Is it 35?
35. Very good point. Yes, so it's a motion to approve 5A as modified to 35, and your second is, good, thank you. Any other talk on item 5A?
Yeah, just briefly, I live in this area, and the way it is right now, it's unclear what the speed limit is, for one. And secondly, the exit ramp, if you're going westbound on I-44 and you get up on Grand Boulevard, there's no traffic controls there. There's no traffic controls for traffic getting on going westbound from Grand, which isn't as big an issue. And when you go east, there's a very tight curve that goes around that corner. Thirdly, I'm noticing a lot more pedestrian activity along this corridor. It appears as though a lot of the employees that work at MidFirst Bank are like walking to the Classen Curve to enjoy lunch. And I anticipate with a PUD happening on the triangle at Classen, Grand Boulevard, and Western Avenue, someday that's going to be built out, and I think that there'll be a lot more pedestrian traffic. So I think 35 is a really good choice here.
All right, anybody else want to talk about item 5A? We have a motion to approve item 5A as modified to change it to 35 miles per hour from Commissioner Littlefield, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. We go on now to item 5B, B.J. Hawkins, P.E., PTOE, Traffic Engineering Consultants, Inc., to consider a request for the installation of a traffic signal on South Council Road at its intersection with a private street, Southwest 2nd Terrace, located approximately 460 feet south of West Reno Avenue. Do we have anybody here to speak on 5B? Okay, so we have staff input.
Okay, the applicant had submitted a request on the 3rd of this month asking this item to be struck from further consideration. So staff would recommend striking the item.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5B?
Motion to strike.
We have a motion to strike item 5B from Commissioner Hale. Do we have a second? We have a second from Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Okay, motion to strike item 5.
I just have,
one moment, yes, sir.
I'm
Please.
fine with striking it. That's not, I'm just wondering why. It seems like if ever there's an intersection that needs a traffic signal, it's this one. That goes into that outlet mall, and it's just so congested right there.
Well, at this point in time, the city's actually had applied in the past for some federal aid funding to basically rebuild the Council Road corridor from Reno Avenue to Southwest 8th Street, and this falls within that
Within
limit.
that.
And right now, and so we'll be reapplying again in next month for federal aid assistance to do some reconstruction on it. But it's probably a corridor that needs a little bit of access management attention because there were, it's very heavily traveled. We got upwards of 25,000 cars a day on that, and it's a very short corridor. And to add another signal just under existing conditions, you'd have like a half dozen within about a half-mile stretch, and it's getting pretty congested. So at this point in time, the applicant has requested the item be struck, and the city is looking at cleaning up the corridor.
Okay, any other talk on 5B? We have a motion to strike item 5B from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is removed. Okay, we go on now to item 5C. Eric Brandt, Vice President, Stone Meadows South Home Owners Association, to consider requests for all-way stock control at Stone Meadows Drive at Southwest 157th Street. Anybody here to speak on this? Sir, if I can have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Sure. My name is Eric Brandt. I am a member of the HOA for Stone Meadows South. I'm just here to answer any questions you may have. Basically, this request was brought to us by adjacent property owners of that particular intersection. So we went through the proper procedure to have this heard. If you have any additional questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else wanting to speak on item 5C? Okay, can we have staff input, please?
All right, you've got all our comments before you. When we reviewed the intersection based on the cities and the MUTCD criteria for considering the use of all-way stop control, we found the intersection does not meet either the city or the national standards for this type of traffic control. One thing that will come that you need to be aware of, that if approved for all-way stop control, you'll have the residents at 625 Southwest 157th Street. Their driveway will fall within the limits of the stop-controlled intersection. And in a condition like that, it can be somewhat challenging for a homeowner or a resident to back, because you'd be forced into backing into a stop-controlled intersection. And at the time at which you enter the intersection may not be clear. Currently, this intersection does have a northbound yield control, which does adequately regulate the intersection based on current volumes that pass through it. The city's had some long-standing standards established for the use of yield control, and this particular intersection would be suitable for continued use of the northbound yield. So, answer any questions if you have them, but at this point in time, staff doesn't have cause to recommend converting the intersection to all-way stop control from its current yield.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion concerning item 5C?
Motion to disapprove.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hale to disapprove item 5C. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Clare. Do we have any discussion on item 5C? Yes, sir.
I'm quickly trying to go through this traffic control change request petition. I'm trying to figure out how many signed it. Am I coming up with 70?
Well, with respect to petition requirements, the commission's operating policy only requires residents within 300 feet to sign.
Okay.
I mean, you can solicit the petition as far and wide as you'd like to. However, when it comes to having an adequate petition to present to the commission, we only require applicants to go out 300 feet on all approaches from the intersection. That way they're not burdened with having to gather petition from an entire neighborhood.
So the petition looks as though they probably went beyond the required 300 feet?
Yeah, it would appear that they would, yeah, because as far as petition requirements go, it's on the first page of your agenda. You'll note that 25 of 25 possible respondents within the canvass area signed in favor, and that 2/3 are required to sign in favor. So of the people living in the immediate proximity to the intersection, all the residents signed the petition in favor of the request.
Thank you for that clarity. What it appears to me is that all, with the exception of maybe a vacant property or two, signed in favor of the petition. And I always defer my judgment to what a neighborhood believes that they want when it comes to traffic calming, when there's no other element yet available to them. And I believe that this neighborhood worked hard, looked at this carefully, had meetings about it, went to the trouble to get a petition done, and I'm in favor of helping them out with these stop signs until there's something that could solve their concerns better in the very near future.
Yes, sir.
I just want to give a little bit more background information as far as how this came to be. Basically, a lot of the property owners that live along there, 157th is a long stretch of road, approximately half a mile. There's a lot of children in Stone Meadows South, also Stone Meadows, the original Stone Meadows to the north. There's a lot of children that basically from elementary age to high school age that use that area to get to the high school, which is directly to the east of this neighborhood. There is a pedestrian bridge just outside the boundaries of this map that is along Vicky Drive, just south of 157th. So there are a lot of kids that come from Stone Meadows from the north, also from Stone Meadows South, back from the west to the east to access pedestrian bridge to get to that high school and elementary school that is adjacent to the high school of the south. So I think there's a lot of concern as far as those children getting to and from those locations safely.
Okay. Do we have any other talk about item 5C? Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a comment. You mentioned in your request that the problem is speeding, right?
Yes, sir.
Speeding. So, and you see stop signs as the answer for speeding.
Well, I myself do not, but basically the residents who live along that particular street see
That's
that
all
as
they-
a viable option, and they approached us. They voiced their concerns, and we went through the proper process to have those needs addressed.
If there were traffic calming techniques that could be used in lieu of stop signs, do you think your neighborhood would be in favor of those? Like a speed hump?
It would be something I would have to bring back to them to see. I would assume if a speed hump or something like that, I assume that would be at the cost of the homeowner association. I don't know.
But it's designed specifically for speeding.
Sure, I understand.
Stop signs are designed or warranted for right-of-way and traffic. So every time we put stop signs in to try to solve a speeding problem, we kind of hurt the warrants for them. And I understand that that's all people think that there is, but I can't see the misuse of stop signs where we have warrants for their use to try to solve a problem that they weren't designed really to solve. They're designed right away. So, I mean, I can see your point, and maybe it puts the pressure on us or as a city to develop more traffic calming measures and get them implemented. But right now, I just can't see, particularly when I see what the warrants are here, how far below they are.
Sure, I understand. It doesn't necessarily have to be a stop sign. Whatever the city would recommend as far as some other traffic measure, I'm sure the neighborhood would be more than happy to listen to that. I don't live on this particular street myself. I live further south, so I can't speak to the daily traffic that goes through there. I can only speak to the fact that there are a lot of children in the neighborhood. There was a similar stop sign request that we put in, it was probably about 2 or 3 years ago off of Southwest 160th. It's basically in the middle of the neighborhood itself, and that particular request was approved at the time. Now, like I said, I don't have any issue with any other recommendation. I would prefer that the city, give us some recommendations of what they would be okay with us putting in as far as traffic calming.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on, sorry, did you have
I was about to say, just for your information, on page 2, you'll see in the middle of that page that we had conducted a spot speed study, and we did it on Southwest 157th Street, which is a longer stretch. Stone Meadows tees into it, so traffic is naturally slowed as it has to either make a right or left turn as it enters the intersection. But the 85th percentile speed that we observed on 157th Street was 27, and the highest recorded speed that we had during our study was 28.
Okay, any other talk on item 5C?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So is putting speed humps an option that we have right now? If it is, I move that we put speed humps.
Well, at this point in time, the policy's not been
Oh, there's
developed.
not? So we can't do it. So you can't do that. It sounds great, but we can't do it, so the only thing we can do is put a stop sign in right now. And 70 people in the neighborhood signed for it. But even the person that is going to, his driveway is going to be between the stop signs, he's fine with it, or he or she. The neighborhood wants it. I would fine with putting up three stop signs, taking down a yield and putting up 3 stop signs. So anyway.
Okay,
Well, I understand what you're saying, but does that mean, well, now we don't have to pursue some other traffic calming mitigation because now we got an answer? And then are we going to take these down if we put in speed humps?
We could.
And does that mean we got to come back? I'm just saying, we're going to have a city full of stop signs at the rate we're going.
Right. Well,
And trying to solve a speeding problem in neighborhoods when it's really a traffic calming problem, not necessarily a speeding problem. So, and I look for the road user. I mean, if I'm going down the road and I see a stop sign, I look around, and I don't see any, it doesn't look like there's any warrants for it. I want to know why I had to stop.
right. Well,
So the
everybody
road
that
user
lives
has
on that street
But
wants the stop sign, and they're the ones that use the road. I mean, it's, they want to stop, and they want to create people slowing down on
They
a
want
half mile straight road that's in a neighborhood filled with kids. I mean, it doesn't seem that
I would think,
outrageous to
I would
put a
think
stop
that
sign.
one of the warrants for a speed hump would be the distance of a straight through, but you do have sidewalks. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just
Well, just to
opposed
say-
to using the traffic control device for something it wasn't intended for.
So if I could ask, is this 157th, I believe was the street, is that a through street? Is there traffic that goes from outside the neighborhood through that road to another thing, or is it just a neighborhood street?
It's just a neighborhood street. Basically, it goes from one end of the neighborhood to the other, from east to west.
Right. Just for history, one of the things that we always looked at was when a housing area got built, roads were done, and then another housing area got built or another thing happened, and sure enough, one of those streets became a through street where people not living in that area, which could be touched by the homeowners association or something, then we had to do something to slow them down. But when we had the homeowners association and a street that was limited in a neighborhood, we've in the past, my opinion is we've said it's up to the neighborhood to fix that problem. So that's just a little history. If I remember using a neighborhood street turns into a through street. Yes, sir, you had a comment?
I had a question for Stuart. So if this becomes a stop-controlled intersection, what happens with allowing trash cans within the intersection? Because obviously these people have to put their trash cans someplace.
I know that the municipal code prohibits activities like parking within an intersection and parking within 30 feet upon the approach to a stop sign. I don't know if I can speak to placement of trash cans. I'm sure most residents would have the opportunity to move their cans further up the road, away from, out of the intersection. I don't know. I'm not sure if there is a restriction on it. I mean, there's also not a requirement that the cans be placed in the road, because they can be collected with the dumpsters being placed, back behind the curb as well. So there's not a requirement that they are placed in the street.
Okay. Any other talk? Yes, sir.
A 300-foot range of space is remarkably small when you think about it. And these folks are asking for the stop sign, all of them, because it's the only thing that they can ask for until a traffic calming policy is intact, which we hope will be soon, but we don't know how soon. We don't have it today. Their problem is today. And something that I want to reiterate is in the traffic calming subcommittee work that we have done, we have recognized that although stop signs aren't necessarily specifically a traffic calming tool, they do tend to slow traffic down within that 300-foot circle. That not everybody's going to stop. A lot of people are going to roll it. A lot of people are going to slow down for it. A lot of people are going to stop. But that's a more positive traffic calming effect than nothing there at all.
Okay, any other talk on item 5C? All right, we have yes, sir.
I need some help. If we put the stop signs up, which I understand everyone's voted for, but if the highest recorded speed's 28, what are we slowing it down to? I mean, really?
Maybe a stop. There's nothing wrong. A stop in a neighborhood at an intersection in a 300-foot circle where people are concerned about kids in the street, kids playing, traffic, however you want to look at the problem. To them, that's a good thing. So I'm not looking at this as a slowing traffic down on that street. I'm looking at this as calming that intersection for the people that live in that 300-foot circle.
I think it's important, very important, to get the people in the neighborhood affected. But now, what would keep them from just going a block south using the same numbers and getting another four-way stop? Or a block over this way and get another four-way stop? And then
Nothing would. If you go through neighborhoods in Oklahoma City like Heritage Hills and Mesta Park, there's stop signs on every single corner, almost virtually.
I just have to believe staff's recommendation and what my background in traffic is, that it's a misuse of stop signs to try to put them where they're not warranted, and especially for speed control. People will stop at a stop sign maybe and float through, but they're going to speed up to the next one. The travel time's in their mind. So I'm just saying, and if we don't put these in, it might put the pressure to get some of this traffic calming policy put forth more quickly. If we start talking about that amongst ourselves, if there is alternatives to this that meets good traffic engineering principles. So.
Okay, any other discussion on item 5C? All right, thank you for your time, sir. Okay, we have a motion to disapprove item 5C from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner Clare. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, the item is disapproved. Okay. We go on now to item 5D. Christopher Richards, to consider a request to establish two-way stop control on Northwest 121st Street at North Harvey Avenue. Have anybody here? Hello, sir. And we have one. Can I have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Chris Richards. My address is 300 Northwest 121st Street. And first, I'd like to say it's maybe a hard act to follow, but good afternoon, Chairman Kula, Commission members, and all others present. I submitted a request for stop signs at 121st and North Harvey. In the report submitted by the Traffic and Transportation Committee, or Traffic and Transportation Commission, my request has been denied. This was based upon the request not meeting the VPD or the DPS's collision database. I questioned the validity of the VPD. I observed that the devices had been installed, but I also observed that one of the devices was no longer secured. The little rubber deal that's out in the street, it was in the easement on Harvey between 120th and 121st. I also questioned the criteria, since there's currently a stop sign at 120th Street and Harvey, which eastbound is a dead end at 120th and Robinson. 121st Street continues from Walker to Santa Fe and is more or less a thoroughfare, and it does lead into a major street. I've resided in the College Park addition since I built my home in 1984. I've seen it grow from a rural area to a neighborhood community. During this growth, as you can imagine, the traffic growth has dramatically increased. My only goal is for the safety of my neighborhood and the many children that catch the bus at this intersection. I was able to obtain more than the necessary signatures needed for the petition, which encouraged me to pursue this issue for the safety of our neighborhood. In summary, I would just like to, for the VPD to be redone, but I also request to know the standards and the requirements for this data to be obtained so it is a precise number for the traffic in my neighborhood. Also, in closing, I would like to point out that the area traffic control map shows 4 posted 25-mile-per-hour signs. There are no speed limit signs in the neighborhood at all. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else wanting to speak on item 5D? Can we have staff input, please?
Okay, you've got your comments before you. Just item of clarity on the map. The speed limits that we depict on the map are just there for reference. We don't show the exact post. It's just so that someone can look at it and know that these particular streets are 25-mile-an-hour streets. If there was an issue with the road tube coming up, we can recount it, and this item could be considered at the next meeting if you'd like to have it tabled and considered till then. I do want to point out that, though, that on the speed studies that we did conduct on 121st Street, we did get an 85th percentile speed of 29. And on Harvey, we had an 85th percentile speed of 27, which, you know, when you consider that the posted speed limit is 25, the 27 on Harvey is actually pretty good. The 29 on 122nd, probably a little bit on the higher side, but unfortunately, it's not that an uncommon occurrence on residential streets to get an 85th percentile that's a few miles over the posted limit. As far as the intersection volumes go, based on the counts that we did collect, this particular candidate intersection would be suitable for use of east-west yield control. As he noted, that there were stop signs just 1 block south at 120th Street, and Commissioner Miller had visited the site in preparing for this meeting, and he noted that those stop signs had been in place since about 95, and they might have possibly earlier. But anyway, the last marked date for their installation was 1995. So action on this item will be at the discretion of the Commission. And like I said earlier, if we want to conduct a recount on the intersection volumes, then I would probably suggest that you consider tabling the item to the next meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a motion concerning item 5D?
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion to follow the staff's recommendations. I did look at this area, and I don't think the traffic volumes are going to change significantly. Just looking at the neighborhood, this to me it looked like a neighborhood that's been forgotten or something. I mean, you'd have to see this neighborhood to realize that some of the streets were never paved, barricades on those. There's just, I mean, there's a lot of things there. But in this particular case, and what Mr. Richards has presented, is that even though it doesn't warrant the stop signs, I do believe yield signs on 120th First would be the answer to help that problem very much so, Richard. The other one, I question why those stop signs got put in on 100, but I'll leave that alone. I'll leave that alone, but I question that a bunch too. But I think the recommendation by the city staff is appropriate, and we'll continue to watch it, and then I'll ask them to maybe take a look at that neighborhood and dress up some of the issues. So I move that staff's recommendation that yield signs be installed in lieu of stop signs.
So you want to disapprove this item because the staff can put up yield signs on their own?
Yeah, they can do that on their own.
Correct.
Yes, I want to disapprove this item.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Miller to disapprove. Oh, stand by.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Miller to disapprove item 5D. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Clare. Any talk on this item?
I was just going to ask the movant to actually state, disapprove the item on the condition that staff follows through with yield signs, if you don't mind. Was that appropriate? Okay, is that your intention? Okay.
Okay, so the correct wording of the motion is that Mr. Miller is recommending disapproval of item 5D with with a statement that staff will go ahead and put yield signs up there, and that was seconded by Commissioner, and you're fine with that, okay? All right, any other talk on this item? Yes, sir.
Will the applicant be satisfied with that?
I believe that the neighborhood would appreciate any method that would either slow the incidents down, because there are so many near misses that occur, and my house is right at that intersection, so I'd definitely be willing to accept that. Thank you.
Okay, staff?
Okay, and Mr. Rich, before you go, Commissioner Miller did mention the fact that there were some like type 3 barricades that were used to close off some of the dead-end streets.
Yes, sir.
We'll have that area, the entire neighborhood looked at, and if there's anything that requires maintenance or replacement, we'll basically do a sign sweep through there and get it cleaned up.
Yeah, because initially those, it's like where Hudson would normally be, they didn't even take that street straight through, and then where Harvey is, it used to be a dirt road, really rural, and then they gradually put rocks there and eventually asphalted it. So, yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other talk on item 5D? Yes, sir.
I just have a quick comment. Staff does a really great job of putting together graphics and illustrations for us to kind of understand what's going on. On the last couple items, something that would be helpful would just be kind of a larger look at the area so that we can see how far streets go through and if they're connected to arterials and things like that. So it would be helpful to me.
So something outside of the neighborhood per se, just see where the neighborhood fits into the whole thing. Okay, all right. Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Miller to disapprove item 5D with a recommendation to staff to put up yield signs, seconded by Commissioner Clare. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is disapproved. Okay. We go on now to item 5E. Nikki Whitson, to consider a request to establish all-way stop control at the intersection of North Montague Drive at Northwest 159th Street. Ma'am, if I could, yes, 5E, if I could have your name, your address, you have up to 5 minutes, and when you're done, fill out one of these, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Pat Zimmerman. I live at 6524 Northwest 159th Street. I say third time's a charm. Thank you for hearing our petition today. We've requested stop signs at 159th and Montague. This area, as you know, in the last 5 years has just exploded. That intersection is actually the only thoroughfare between Rockwell and MacArthur and 164th and 150th. So what has happened is that people, and we have a new elementary school over there as well, we have also 5 additional additions going in that area. All of these individuals are now discovering this is the only way to get through between Rockwell and MacArthur and 164th and 150th. So what we've seen is a great increase of the traffic, even though I know the traffic report does it short right now. But the increase of traffic has just become, we sit out and watch it on our front porch and watch the cars doing this. Montague Drive also was developed in a rural area. There are no sidewalks for the children to walk. So what we've found is that folks wanting to go from MacArthur to 164th, they're circumventing going down going down MacArthur, coming through the addition and going over to 164th. Montague is the only northbound exit for this entire area, other than Rockwell and MacArthur. On the other end of that, 159th is the only cross-through traffic for that entire area. There is no other entrances or exits to Rockwell or MacArthur. So what we're asking is that a 4-way stop be established there to control some of the traffic. That with all the new housing additions that are going in, it's only going to become more of a bottleneck. We've seen problems with school buses, cars going around school buses that are stopped. We've had problems with, this area is a very, we do a lot of walking. Our children do a lot of playing. We have a lot of joggers out here. And it is a constant battle with the traffic and cars going around folks out there. So what we're asking, if we can put this four-way stop in there, start maybe a deterrent for the traffic that's coming through trying to get between Rockwell and MacArthur, it will help slow that traffic down, I do believe.
All right, thank you, ma'am. All right, if you can go ahead and fill out the form while we move on. Anybody else wanted to talk on item 5E? Okay, staff input, please.
All right, you've got our comments before you. You've got a request for all-way stop control. In this particular case, Montague Drive is the only kind of like north-south connector that kind of provides joint access between the additions off to the east and the additions to the west in this area. However, Montague does not continue further to the south. It only goes another 2 blocks and then it ends. 159th Street is kind of an east-west cross-access link. However, it does not go all the way through to Rockwell Avenue. You actually have to turn south a little bit and you have to come out on 157th Street. In this particular case, if you look at on page 1, like the traffic entering volumes, you'll see that there's a lower volume entering on Montague Drive than there is on the east-west run, which is 159th Street. It's only got a combined traffic entering volume of just over 900 vehicles per day. The city's minimum policy when considering the use of all-way stop control looks at a volume of having at least 2,500 vehicles per day, and even the manual and uniform traffic control devices suggest that you should look at traffic entering volumes of about 2,000 vehicles per day when considering something like all-way stop control. In this particular case, the traffic volumes are almost balanced. You've got 57% of your traffic on 159th Street and the balance on Montague. In this particular case, this intersection, if you're looking at it strictly from a regulatory standpoint, it would probably lend itself for the use of yield control on Montague Drive, which is a lesser traveled road, as opposed to Northwest 159th Street. And as was mentioned, this particular portion of the addition is a little bit unusual because all the surrounding neighborhoods have got curbed and guttered streets, and just the center portion of this neighborhood is built to more of a rural residential standard. So they've got, the roads aren't curbed, and they've got roadside bar ditches there to carry local stormwater. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have on this particular item, but since the location does not meet the city's or the manual and uniform traffic control device warrants for the use of all-way stop control, we're just not in a position to recommend the use of that type of control at this intersection. As I noted earlier, based on the city's policy, it would be more of a candidate for the use of yield control on Montague Drive.
Do we have a motion concerning item 5E?
And I guess my only comment would be that we're kind of in that same situation where you have 40 or 50 signatures from the people that live in that area that want it. You look at the data, and even if you look at the over screenshot of that, it looks like it's early. It looks like because there's a big part of that intersection has no housing yet. It just kind of almost looks like at some point four-way stop will be needed there, and when it gets all built out, but it's not built out now. So I guess I'm just in a little bit of a.
It is built out now.
Oh, it is? So these are old pictures?
These are old pictures. 159th is completely built. Montague, and I live at 59th and 159th and Montague. Mm-hmm. All 4 sides of that intersection have houses on it now. Mm-hmm. 159th has houses all the way down. Montague has houses all the way down now. So those are old pictures. But another thing I would like to bring up is the fact the speed, during the time that they did do the speed, it was between 9:45 and 10:45. Our speedy times are in the morning as people are trying to get to work, and in the evenings as people are trying to get home. And so that does come into play. The speeds do get greater during those times rather than during the middle of the
So do we have a motion concerning item 5E? What's that, sir? I'm sorry.
I move approval of it, absolutely. Would move approval for the neighborhood, that everyone wants it.
So,
You know, again, I don't know if we're going to be 4-3 again or not, but I think a neighborhood like this, or like any neighborhood, the homeowners association comes through, they walk the neighborhoods, they get all the signatures. There's no, I don't see one no signature on this. It's the Raceway. There's one street that goes north and south out to 164th. This is it. There's just lots and lots of reasons why we should be okay with it. But
so your motion?
Yes, approve.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner George to approve item 5E.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have any talk on item 5E? Yes, sir.
Would it be possible to do another speed study at a different time of day? I would feel more comfortable making a decision based on either a broader time or a different time, because it's being indicated that this may not have been the best time to observe traffic.
Right. Typically, when you get to, you don't necessarily observe your highest speeds when traffic's at its heaviest, and that might be particularly true of maybe like an arterial facility or something like that, but in a neighborhood, it probably is not that sensitive. We would just have to schedule some overtime for our data collection staff to go out there and gather it. But if it'd be the preference of the commission to defer action on the item for an updated speed study, we can do that. Because if we were to conduct another speed study, the only thing would be, and you took action today, the only thing we could do then would be to report on our findings at the next meeting.
Okay. Sir?
Yeah, here again, it looks to me like the city's recommended yield signs over stop signs. Now, yield signs serve a good purpose, and they can do what you think, and it still doesn't impede the road user. If there's nobody they have to stop for, they can keep going. Would you be opposed to yield signs like the staff recommended? Until time, this may even warrant signal in a few years, who knows? But until then, but we need to progress as we need to.
Well, I kind of compare that to getting on the interstate. How many people actually yield getting on an interstate? And I know you're supposed to. What happens is that people take it for granted and just kind of go through. We've seen so many near misses out there because as you come over, and they did come out and put 2 yield signs up on 159. And that did help in one area because as you come up over the crest of 159, it was limited visual. I mean, you had a very short amount of space to stop if there was traffic on Montague, because Montague goes much faster than 159. But not only is my concern for what's going on today, my concern is the 500 houses that are being built to the south of us that are going to use this intersection as well. So I'm also trying to look towards the future. This isn't just about today. This is about in a year or 2 years from now as well. Because honestly, there's, I believe, 300 or 400 that are to the south of us. There are 2 more additions to the west of us. And again, once people find out this route is the only way, let's say there's an accident, 164th and MacArthur or Rockwell, this is going to become the only route they have. And it's going to become much more aggressive driving, people trying to get home, people trying to go to work. So this is not just for today, but for tomorrow as well.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, any other talk on item 5E? It's okay, you may go have your seat.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, any other talk on item 5E? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5E from Commissioner George, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Have your votes, please. Okay, the item is approved. We go on now to item 5F, Ty Hartwig and Traffic Management Division, to consider a request to, 1, change the speed limit on North Rockwell Avenue between Northwest 150th Street and Northwest 164th Street from 50 miles per hour to 40 miles per hour, or change the speed limit on North Rockwell Avenue between West Memorial Road and Northwest 164th Street from 50 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. Anybody here to speak? Well, sir, I believe I have your card. If I can have your name, your address, you have up to 5 minutes.
Ty Hartwig. My address is 16301 North Rockwell.
Okay, so it's not yours. So if I could have you fill one of these out when you're done talking.
Okay.
Please.
All right. I've been a landowner out there since 1993. I've owned about 500 acres. And we've had a lot of progress out in this area, as the last person that was up here talking about. I've got a wholesale nursery and a landscape company there. And I've built a fuel station on the corner of 164th and Rockwell, and I've built a strip center on the corner of 150th and Rockwell. And in between there, we have 5 new additions. We have a new Deer Creek school. And so the issue here is really safety. I witness it every day. Every day, my crews, we try to get 135 trucks and trailers out at 7 a.m. in the morning. We have not been able to do that, been able to enter on Rockwell for some time. The wholesale nursery averages 15 semis per week between 7 and 9 a.m. in the morning. That's 780 semis. You watch the school buses try to stop and pick up. There's just accidents waiting to happen. We've had to build a temporary road from the middle of our property that goes through, goes north, and that we've laid a gravel road that we can exit on 164th and then go down to the stop sign. I noticed that there was a traffic study done, and where that was done, coming north from 150th, that device was set right before the school, which is only about 500 feet, where the school zone is and everything. And so I think that some of this information may be skewed a little bit, as it shows that the speed is a little lower than normal. But coming from the north going south from 164th, by the time the cars hit my businesses and stuff right there, they're going in excess of 60 easily. So I was just asking for your consideration to do something mainly for safety. Like I said, it used to take me about 7 minutes to get 135 crews out. Now it takes an average of 40. So it's definitely an accident waiting to happen, and it's continually growing. All the new additions, that the roads are just cut. Probably 1,000 more homes that are going to be built there. So it's a pretty fast growing area.
So if I could ask before we have staff input between items 1 and 2, sub-items 1 and 2, where do you stand on it?
On which item would that be?
Well, sub-item 1 is the 50 to 40 miles per hour change on one section of the road. Sub-item 2 is to 45 on 2 sections of road.
I think that from Memorial to 150th, I would be fine with 45, but from 150th to 164th, where the school is, it really needs to be 40.
Okay. Very good. Okay. So you're saying the request that you had was to the 40 miles per hour, and
Correct.
That's what you want.
Correct.
But you're okay with the second portion of that,
Correct.
for just that one section. Okay. Just wanted to make that clear. All right. Thank you. Staff input.
Okay, well, the way this item is presented, Mr. Hartwig's got his request, and he's asking for a speed limit reduction from 50 to 40 on the section between Northwest 150th and Northwest 164th. What staff has presented was as an alternate for consideration is a reduction from 50 to 45, but it would be from Memorial Road up to 164th Street. You've got all our comments before you. With respect to information regarding the speed study, the road tubes that we use for our study aren't used for, or we use that for collecting traffic volume only. If we do a speed study, we use a laser speed gun, and so we do basically individual site assessments at the times when we're going to get the best free-flowing traffic. Those studies are included at the tail end of the agenda for this particular item. You'll notice that the studies for both the miles between Memorial and 150th and from 150th to Northwest 164th Street are observed 85th percentile speed is 48 miles an hour. And that's actually running 2 miles an hour below the posted 50-mile-an-hour limit. Along this little this 2-mile section of Rockwell, the southern portion of the mile that's between Memorial and Northwest 150th Street has been partially curbed. It's also been partially widened. Typically, when the city uses a curbed roadway section, we will reduce the speed limit to below 50, so typically it would go to 45. In this particular case, the Commission has also looked at the speed limits on other portions of Rockwell Avenue, which is why staff had presented the second part in this item, which would be looking at a reduction to 45, because then from the corporate limits of the city of Bethany at Northwest 63rd Street all the way to Oklahoma County's limits at 164th Street, we will have a 7-mile corridor where we have a consistent 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. When you're looking at or considering a speed lower than that, every location along these 2 miles will pass decision site distance based on the currently posted speed limit, so they'll pass it at 45 and also pass at 40. We don't really have cause to recommend an 85th percentile that's getting too far off, or posted a new speed limit posted this too far below the posted 85th or the observed 85th percentile speed. Since 48 is reasonably close to 45 as recommended, for consistency's sake, that's our recommendation if you're going to look at a kind of a bigger picture speed change on this portion of Rockwell. We used the Bella Light method when we were kind of conducting an analysis of what's called like the credible speed limit, and based on that analysis, granted it's done in metric units, but that analysis showed that you should be looking at a credible speed that's in the neighborhood of at least 43 miles an hour. So 45 mile an hour would fit into that analysis as opposed to a request for something like 40. So action on this item will be at the discretion of the Commission. You've got a request from the applicant, which is just for lowering the speed on 150th from 150th to 164th Street to 40 miles an hour, or the staff recommendation, which would be considered as an alternative, which is Part 2, which is a speed limit reduction to 45 for those last 2 miles of Rockwell in northwest Oklahoma City. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, we had somebody else that wanted to speak. Richard, sorry. If you come up and give your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Richard McCubbin. I live at 6205 Northwest 162nd Street, and I am a frequent driver of Rockwell Avenue. I also go through Montague and 159th. Haven't had any near misses there. But driving down Rockwell Avenue, the speed study shows 48 miles an hour through the whole thing. I typically drive it at 50. Nobody is tailgating. Nobody's speeding away from us. It's a safe road. We don't have any issues. Occasionally, the total environmental trucks are out there, and they're trying to make their turns in and out just like everybody else. But I've never seen any issues along this stretch of road with a 50-mile-an-hour posted speed limit. Currently, we're out in the sticks. We kind of like it that way. There are some new subdivisions coming in that are going to be near the school, but the school has a school zone during the morning and afternoon release and pickup, and traffic travels out through there just fine. We'd really like it to stay at 50 at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5F? Okay, we have a motion concerning item 5F.
Well, I know that one wants 50, one wants 40. I like the staff's recommendation of Part 2 that kind of splits that difference and takes the whole 2 miles at 45 miles an hour.
Okay.
Makes it consistent with the whole 9 miles of Rockwell or thereabouts. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner George to approve Part 2 of item 5F. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Littlefield. Any discussion?
I believe that we've seen requests like this before where it pretty much just boiled down to consistency was the motivation for approving items like this.
Okay, any other talk on item 5F? Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner George to approve item 5F, Part 2, seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. We go on now to item 5G, Lois Daniels, President, Jefferson's Garden Homeowners Association, to consider a request for the installation of a traffic signal at the intersection of North Pennsylvania Avenue and Northwest 155th Street. So I see we do have somebody to speak on 5G. Can I have your name, your address? You have up to 5 minutes, and make sure to fill out one of the blue forms.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
I am Lois Daniels, 2110 Northwest 155th Street, and I'm representing our HOA. We're a retired community of 68 homes, and also at the end of 155th Street, there is no outlet other than the North Penn and 155th is where we made the request for a traffic light. And also at the end of our community, there is an assisted living building. Staff comes 24/7, and they also had signed the petition I sent in, along with the counseling center that's on that same road, and they're Monday through Friday, basically. But we have had increased problems getting in and out with the more things being developed, and even though your study at the time, we appreciate your doing that, but now some of the developments to the south of us are getting near finished. We have storage units going up, apartment buildings, restaurants, different retail stores, just is going to bring more and more traffic along Penn. So that is going to be increasingly more a problem in the future, as well as has been up to this point. I would like our Vice President Randy to speak to this also.
Okay, so ma'am, if you could come on up and fill out a form. And sir, same thing for you. I need your name, your address. You have up to 5 minutes, and then fill out a form when you're done, please.
My name's Randy Abeck, and I live at 2210 Northwest 155th Street. Part of the study that I read showed that there's a significant amount of speeding on Penn between 155th and 150th. The average 85 percentile speed was shown to be 48 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. So we're concerned about when you try to exit out of the 155th Street, if everyone was driving the posted limit, it would be easier for those people leaving that street to make a good judgment call as, am I safe to pull out? You know, how fast are these people coming? And in the 95 percentile, there was a 51 and a maximum speed of 54 in that speed zone area that was done on the speed study. So my concern is that there may be enough line of sight based upon what is designed, but there's not enough reaction time based upon what the actual traffic is moving at that point. So that's part of my concern. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Just one other thing that many of our residents have been concerned about coming north from the south to turn left into our development. Because of a lot of speeding, there are cars that are just right up against us, and we ask people to turn on left turn blinkers way ahead. which we tried to do, but there have been some people rear-ended in the past couple years, and many near misses. It just, even if one car goes around you, another is speeding right behind, and there's nowhere to go. So maybe a left turn lane might solve some of the problem, but that wasn't in on the request, but something that you may consider.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5G? Okay, can we have staff input, please?
All right, you've got our comments before you. I'm going to kind of go through this staff report on a page-by-page basis. On the first page, you'll notice that the applicants highlighted that we'd found that the 85th percentile speed observed on Pennsylvania Avenue, which is posted 40 miles an hour, is currently running 48, or was on the day that we did our study. You'll also notice that the traffic entering volumes are substantially different between these two facilities. In this particular area, Penn is carrying just over 22,000 cars per day. The traffic entering volume from 155th Street is 418 vehicles per day. When we analyzed this particular intersection for the use of signalized traffic control, we look at the standard warrants established in the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And based on those warrants, there is not sufficient volume that comes off of 155th Street to meet any of the signal warrants. I mean, like the applicant noted, the 155th Street does not connect into any other areas, so it's not really subject to, collecting traffic from any other areas to run it through across Pennsylvania Avenue. We did do, at the bottom of page 1, you'll notice that we did assess decision site distance at the location, and looking both north and south from 155th Street, the site distance meets the city's criteria based on the posted speed limit, but also at 40, it would also pass at 45 miles an hour. Now, obviously, when you get into, some of the more extreme speeds that some drivers may see fit to use, you can't meet. You'll run into situations where your site distance won't pass, but it won't. But it's not designed to pass for that, and those are speeds that are inappropriate for a curbed roadway section as it is. So we ran our signal warrants through. In a particular case like this, a roadway, the side street volume would probably need to have, in order to meet minimum traffic volume warrants for considering the use of a traffic signal, you'd need to be running typically about at least 150 vehicles per hour on the minor street approach. And in this particular case, when we ran our warrants through, we found that the highest traffic entering volume that came in off of Northwest 155th Street was 45 vehicles per hour. So the 8-hour warrant isn't satisfied. The 4-hour warrant and the peak hour warrant isn't applicable, but none of those traffic-based warrants are satisfied for the use of a traffic signal at this intersection. There aren't any decision site distance or view obstructions that might be considered a mitigating cause for the use of this particular type of control. While we can appreciate it's difficult to get out, especially and make a left turn during, heavier traffic periods, and especially on a busy road like Pennsylvania, the use of a signal for a low volume approach, such as 155th Street, is just not something that we can justify. So staff just doesn't have cause to recommend approval of the request as presented. We've also noted that the only collision that we've got record of was actually a rear-end collision on Penn at this intersection. So there aren't any angle turning or broadside type collisions to report.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5G?
Motion to disapprove.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hale to disapprove item 5G. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Miller. Any discussion on item 5G?
I have one question for Stuart. The 85th percentile in Pennsylvania was about 48, right? Had the speed limit been 45 on Pennsylvania, which would have brought it into the 70% reduced volumes, still wouldn't have met?
No, it would not have passed.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Did you say that the site distance is fine for the 48 miles an hour?
Okay, because when we went out there, at the bottom of page 1, that you'll notice that matter of fact, at the very tail end of the first paragraph, that we commented, looking north from 155th Street, the available decision site distance is in excess of 1,200 feet. 1,200 feet, okay, now, this is just looking one direction, which is looking north. The highest site distance number that we've got, let's see if we've got it in this particular case. I know it's been in several of the others. I believe it's like 890 feet, and that'd be for a speed limit of like 55 miles an hour. 700 feet, well, in excess of 700 is what we have looking to the south. In this particular case, 690 feet would be appropriate at a posted speed limit of 45. But, we would never post anything, because Pennsylvania is curbed, we'd never post anything higher than that at this point in time. So decision site distance-wise, the intersection's fine.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, let me just ask, is there anything we can do to slow people down and to warn them that there'd be something coming up there on the left that they might need to watch out for? I mean, can we put a yellow T sign with a 45 mile per hour or with a 40 mile per hour, even though that's the right speed, just to remind drivers, hey, there's something coming up here, you really need to really do the speed limit? I mean, is that something that...
Well, an intersection warning sign is always something that could be posted. I was about to say, the only collision record we have is for a rear-end collision, and that was for someone that was presumably making slowing at 155th Street to make a turn into the addition.
Well, just is there some other tool, some other caution to drivers to say you need to just, even though it looks like it's okay to do 50, you really shouldn't because there's something right here?
I might have to defer your question to the representative from the police department, because in this particular case, if some re-education, maybe a few citizen contacts to remind people of what their duty is on the road with respect to safety for others on the roads, it's probably more an item for, that might require that sort of attention. Now, as far as like an intersection warning sign goes, something could be posted in the northbound direction. And typically what we've done is we posted that, and we posted, sometimes you can post, you've got options. You can either post an advisory speed, or you could and what we found is probably more beneficial is posting the name of the street that's coming up and the distance to it. Because especially if someone's looking for something in an area where they're unfamiliar,
And you're saying mainly on the northbound because of the left turn issue,
right? Yeah.
Compared to the southbound where they can just slow down and make the turn.
Right.
So something that you can put up there, northbound, to warn people there's something coming up that you need to watch out for, with a reminder, 40 mile per hour, yellow underneath kind of thing. Is that just to remind people that it is 40? And then the education piece.
I mean, we can certainly do that. We can put an advisory sign up. There wouldn't be any issue with that.
Okay.
Got another question for you, Stuart. That whole quarter section, basically, it looks like, at 150th and Penn, is being developed now with strip centers and housing and all that. Looks like it's going to go all the way up to 54th. Is that 155th where it turns down south? Is that going to connect to that new subdivision?
I don't believe so, no.
That would help them big time if they could connect that so they could have another way out that would be, closer to the 150th where people are already slowing down and stopping.
I don't believe that roadway was designed to be connected to the south.
Yes.
Recently, we had a power line downage right there at that street on Penn. They have the high power lines. We were stuck in our homes for 3 days because the high power lines there were down. We couldn't get in or out of that area too. So another exit going south to the where that curves around and goes down would really be nice.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's already platted and in a PUD of some sort. And I don't know if there's anything we can suggest to the Planning Commission, if anything's still up for grabs, or the fire department, I'm sure, would like another entrance into that area as well. So it might be I can see that this one street, it's going to be hard to get a stop sign, or stop signal ever approved. Right, unless until maybe at some point when the east side of Penn gets developed, and then it becomes a bigger intersection, which is in the future. But,
So one of the recommendations I would have back to you is just get a hold of your Ward 8 planning person.
Yes, or city
And-
council
and-
person.
Well,
to
yeah,
find out.
go with the planning person first
Right.
and see if it's already past the point where it's passed.
Right.
And if there's any options,
Any options.
see if they can throw in.
Yeah, if you were going to make an inquiry to that effect, I would visit with our planning department staff over at 420 West Main Street. They're on the 9th floor, and you could see what has been platted in the area south of this particular location. It may be that there's something that's been platted that doesn't have any sort of street connection possible.
Right.
But it's one of those things you have to. Even if it was connected to another, connected through, it may provide other forms of access out, and so it may or may not make any difference as to whether or not this becomes a more viable intersection for, looking at signalized traffic control. It may make it less viable. And of course, then the trade-off is now that you've introduced or provided another connection, that the road will inherently become probably a little bit busier than what it is today.
Awesome.
Okay, any other discussion on item 5G? Okay, we have a motion to disapprove item 5G from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is disapproved. Could you talk to them about possible street signage of some sort to warn people of a left issue? However you would.
I'll have my staff take a look at it, and if we can put up warning signs in advance of the intersection.
Okay, and then could you get a hold of the cycle guys there and have them spend some time? All right, thank you very much. Okay, we go on now to item 6, comments from citizens. Anybody wishing to speak? Yes, sir, please. We already have your name, we already have a card, so just to refresh your name and address, and you have up to 5 minutes, sir.
Sure. My name's Eric Brandt, 817 Southwest 161st Street. I just want to appreciate you listening to our item for the Stone Meadow South. From my understanding, based on the conversation that was had here, Oklahoma City does not have a traffic calming policy that's currently in place. We would like to be notified at a time when it does come to be in play, but if you need a neighborhood for a pilot project, please contact us as well. Thank you.
Very good. Anybody else wanting to speak? Okay, we go on now to item 7, reports and other items. Let's go through the traffic commissioners. We go to Commissioner Clare.
I was going to make the comment that, we had the joint planning session last month with the Planning Commission, and I think that last agenda item just emphasizes how much that we need to come up with better standards and guidelines and revamp our planning documents to promote good neighborhood and development design, because I think that's just that example is just it's just bad development, providing 74 homes and a senior living facility with one entry and exit off a major arterial road. So,
Thank you very much. Go over to Commissioner Littlefield.
Thank you. I totally agree. What's interesting about this commission is that we keep getting over and over again these similar cases where neighborhoods are requesting stop signs. And very respectfully, we all disagree from time to time. They don't get approved from time to time. But something that I truly, honestly believe in my heart is that all of us recognize and understand that those things are coming to us because they're trying to solve a problem. And the Traffic Calming Subcommittee, the hard work that we've done on that, and where this is on the Public Works desk, working with the policy to add things to a toolbox to help solve problems in existing neighborhoods, I can't imagine that we wouldn't agree that that's a good thing. We can look at these folks when they come before us. They're not asking for a stop sign. They're asking for speed humps or whatever could wind up in that inventory that could really help solve their problems. That was comment number 1. Comment number 2, totally focus on, clear your mind. When I drive downtown, which lately has been more often than I normally do, I come down Hudson. And I don't know if the city of Oklahoma City has a jaywalking ordinance or not, but for me to drive down Hudson, when I get near where the bus terminal is, it's a video game of pedestrians. I am very concerned that either I or some citizen in this city is going to have an accident with a jaywalking pedestrian in that finite corridor. It's disturbing to me. Thank you very much.
Okay, then we go on over to Commissioner Hale.
And no, nothing to report this time. I do appreciate a good, healthy discussion, and I sometimes feel like coming off a little bit stern, just following with the city's recommendations. I would like to ask the commissioners that have been working on this. I did notice on two of the requests that we had today, the very first one, the gentleman stayed for additional comments. His neighborhood does have sidewalks. So whenever they talk about the safety of children and having to go to the bus stop, to me that makes a big difference. If they have sidewalks, as opposed to the second gentleman, that his neighborhood is basically rural, and if the kids are walking in the rain, they're going to walk on the street. I mean, I can see a difference, a huge difference between those two requests. So on your committee for traffic calming, have you discussed any as far as the pedestrian traffic?
JB, do you mind? What the traffic calming subcommittee has discovered is effective traffic calming takes more than one element. One stop sign isn't going to fix the problem. One speed hump may not fix the problem. But when you look at, we talk often about the condition of a roadway when we're driving down that. If there's a sidewalk and it's lined with trees and there's cars parked along it, the road is narrow and the road is curved, and there's speed bumps and stops, I mean, just go crazy in your mind. That has a much more positive effect on calming traffic than any one thing. So am I answering your question? Sidewalks are a beneficial traffic calming element, but it's not going to work all by itself. Am I helping you? And likewise, I can understand why when there's an application for a stop sign in a neighborhood and my colleagues are witnessing that folks are talking about children walking in and out, if there's a sidewalk or not, I could see that where that would affect a commissioner's vote, respectfully.
Okay.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Miller?
Nothing, sir.
George? Okay. Anything else from you? Nothing to report. Counselor? Okay. Staff?
We just have our monthly report on yield signs that have been installed administratively. Just want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much. Oh, one second. Yes, sir.
Is there a jaywalking ordinance in Oklahoma City? I'm sorry. I'm from the east.
Sorry. I'm trying to think of the actual wording. Yes, there is an ordinance that covers crossing in the middle of the street. So that might, how'd you put it, re-education? I can put that out to the divisions and also to our bicycle guys, and we'll keep an eye out for it.
Thank you. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion. Can I have a second? Somebody second? Second. Okay, let's all vote. And one more, Mr. George. Yeah, okay, unless you want to stay. Thank you all.